First off, I mentioned I worked in government, and one of the things I learned from government bureaucracies that's also true of business bureaucracies is they hate change. You just hate change. I mean, almost before you ask, am I a winner or loser in this thing? You go, is it a big change? Even if you're giving me a ton more money, I'm not thrilled by that either, because I've got a lot of new expectations on me, and I'm not sure I agree with all these new expectations. It is the change that is the fear. And again, in my opinion, organizations exist to thwart change. That's what they're there for. And if you think about business writ large, every successful business is a successful business because it was brilliant at solving some customer problem. And then as they grow, they become much more interested in their own problem than the customer problem. They spend a hell of a lot more time talking about their own internal budgeting, their own, what the Days for a Life soap opera. And the customer gets lost. And that's actually a pretty common thing. Yeah. I'm not describing kind of a one-off, God, that never happens. I'm describing this is an arc that it impacts every single business that every single leader has to be fighting about and fighting against all the time.
Yeah. So Frank, we're going to start to move to landing our plane. I hate to do it because it feels like we're just getting started. But one thing I do want to call out, we'd had a prior conversation and you gave me this golden nugget that I've been sharing with clients since. And the golden nugget is, I want to paraphrase you. You said great leaders and leadership teams, they pull complexity up, push simplicity down. Not so effective ones do the opposite. They pull simplicity up, push complexity down. I think that's masterful, brilliant, and difficult to do. Would love to get maybe a few thoughts from you on that concept before we officially start to close.
Yeah, so I'm glad you picked up on that, Brandon, because I think it's hugely important. I think almost all leaders know that complexity kills momentum and that complexity is not a good thing. So everybody starts from the same line. I want to make things simple. Then you get to what that means. And there are some C-suites for whom making things simple means it's simple around our table. We can express, here are the simple things we want everybody doing. Now, underneath it, there are all kinds of complexities and trade-offs, but we don't want to get into it. The field will deal with that. Well, all you've done when you've done that is you've absorbed simplicity up as the leadership team. Here's our nice statement of values and all the rest. And all the complexity, all those trade-offs, all the difficulties, we've just pushed down to the organization. In my opinion, the right way for an organization to behave, a leadership team to behave, is they need to absorb the complexity up and push simplicity down, by which I mean the leadership team needs to be wrestling with the trade-offs. So to take an easy retail example, retailers, particularly now, are worried about shrink, theft in store. So there are a series of things you can do in a store that will reduce theft, shrink. Those tend not to be very customer friendly. So if I just say, here's my simple statement as the leader, I want a great store experience and I want as little theft as possible. All right, that sounds simple. But for the store manager, I've got no idea what that hasn't made it simple. That's actually made it more complicated because I know they're going to hold me accountable for achieving something unique on theft and customer experience, and those two things require trade-off. Far better for the team, leadership team, to sit around the table and say, this is the amount of risk we're willing to absorb. We're going to take some of that complexity off the table. I mean, we're not going to eliminate it entirely, but we're going to take some of that complexity off the table for the store manager and say, here, as you know, this is what we mean. We're willing to tolerate your letting loose of the rope on theft, or you're letting the loose of the rope on customer service, whatever it is, to this extent. That has made things simpler, operation. We would talk about, anyway, that's a simple example, but to my mind, if a leadership team is talking about making things simple, and if they haven't spent a lot of time actually wrestling with the trade-offs and coming up with the answers to the trade-offs, they have not made things simple. They've just pushed the complexity down the organization.